Aditya Thackeray, Cabinet Minister of Maharashtra, thank you so much for speaking with Hindustan Times. I want to, I'm speaking to you at a time where various states have just announced the unlocking. Maharashtra has also done the same. But it's also coming at a very difficult time, and you, as someone who handles environment, must be very concerned about it. Also, at a time when they are predicting that you'll be hit with a cyclone soon. How bad really is it handling all of this together?
Uh, to be very honest, firstly, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. We've been doing this for almost 7, 8 years, and crucial times, especially, be it elections, be it whatever. So, no, we have been, on top of the situation. Thankfully, all the citizens have been really cooperative. Everyone's been patient with this whole scenario. And COVID is one scenario where nobody in the world has yet been able to predict whether opening up or a lockdown, how long would it go on for. Uh, to be honest, we have begun a mission yesterday called Begin Again, because lockdown has, of course, been around for almost 2.5, 3 months. And as we start opening up, it has to be very, very slow, very, very staggered, planned, carefully planned, measured. And the biggest factor of measuring in here is the medical response and how we are hit in a medical sense more than anything else. Because first is life over livelihood. Of course, we are now opening up so that livelihoods don't die out, but primarily we want to protect and safeguard our citizens and the entire population. So I think that is very important. The way we went into a lockdown as a state also was very staggered. From around 8th or 9th of March, we started moving into a lockdown phase wise. Likewise, if we have to come out of it, it has to be in a very planned and a very meticulous planning has to go in. So that's what is happening.
So, when you say meticulous and plan phase wise, I know that you have said, okay, we are going to open up shops on alternate days, but we are not going to have malls. So, tell us, what is the process that you all employed in order to take that particular route?
No, so of course, there have been a lot of deliberations right from every association that is into this. Apart from that, all the directives or any observations any other country in the world has made, be it WHO, any other country. So basics of for example, if there's a single air circulation, is that more detrimental than not having air conditioning? So one of the factors was that. So a couple of factors, or the footfalls and how spacing out would happen, how social distancing could happen, or rather physical distancing should be happening, alternate sides of the roads, things like that. So if you see from, I think, the second or the third, we've opened up for people to at least step out and get into a little bit of physical exercise, be it walks or just a little jog or a run, but not touch any equipment or not go indoors. So because as less the surface you touch, that's safer for you. So that then from fifth onwards, alternate sides of the roads for shops. Eighth onwards, offices with 10%. So these are staggered openings we are indulging in, because of course all of this is always going to be trial and error. All of this is always going to be a system where you work in a way where you have the cooperation of the citizens, they follow precautions, and you take absolute caution to keep them safe. So I think it's a two-way process, and that's what we've seen everywhere around the world. Some of the things that have really opened up, say, the other day I was reading a news article about schools opening up in a couple of countries and shutting
Yes,
down.
in the
So we
UK.
don't want to get into the exactly, and I believe in Korea as well. So we don't want to get into the fluctuation zone of yes, no, yes, no. So the slower we go and the steadier we go, I think it's better.
So, what is the deal with schools in Maharashtra? Aditya, I know that usually you open in June.
Yes, around 10 to 13 June is the opening time normally. Most of our schools currently, especially in red zones, are quarantine facilities and CC1s. So obviously we cannot open them up to education purposes right now. But we've begun a process where we've started interacting with a lot of people in the field of education and technology. And even though schools might not open up, we cannot hold back education. Education has to open up. So how do we reach out to each and every child, irrespective of the economic strata, social strata? How do we start off with education for them? Is it online? In green zones, can we start offline? What does social distancing mean in schools? I think these are some of the deliberations that we've got into now. There was an hour-long meeting that the chief minister held with a couple of people yesterday in terms of education and technology. Likewise, I have been doing that. Our ministers for higher and technical education, Mr. Uday Samant, and for school education, Ms. Varsha Gaikwad, both of them have been also in this work a lot. So
So
we are
you don't have
focusing
a
on
date
education. We
yet.
cannot. Not really, but we cannot let the academic year just pass by without education beginning. So we have to start off with education.
So what's fascinating is that, like you, I was also just hearing about the fact that China's opened up its schools, and in one of the classes they have more than 50 people. And this was the American reporter, his children going to one of those schools. So it's fascinating as to how people are opening up and what kind of
Exactly, and for our school ratios, most of the schools have about one teacher to 40-45 kids, and in a smaller space. So how do we do physical distancing in that sense is also very important there.
if we just look at the like a macro picture, Aditya Thackeray, I wanted to ask you that it looks, the figures about Maharashtra are a bit um, for using a
Scary.
very generic, yes, that's right, thank you for that. That's because out of the five worst hit districts, three of them are in Maharashtra: Mumbai, Thane, and Pune. um, what do you see as the possible solution or hope for that, or are you accepting that yes, we are the worst hit and this?
Sunitra, in this, I think the first and foremost principle that we have to use as a government and someone trying to work in COVID relief is not fear the numbers. Because in any disaster, especially when you have an epidemic or you have a pandemic which is of a global scale, where you've seen numbers in China, you've seen numbers in Brazil, in Italy, in France, in Spain, in the United States, especially in a city like New York. In all these cities, especially in these countries, the way population density is spaced out is very, very different from what Mumbai is. Again, one of the biggest difference is Mumbai's community toilets and the way our houses are planned, or the size of an average house and the amount of people living in that house.
The chawl
This is
system.
exactly, this is a vast difference from any other city that you could compare Mumbai to. And then if you compare that, we've done far better than most of the cities. But I wouldn't, there's nobody to blame, because when there's a virus you're fighting against, an invisible enemy, you've got to respect the virus while fighting it. Again, when I say don't fear the numbers, a higher number isn't necessarily a higher infection than a neighboring city or a neighboring state. It only means that the government and your local officers have been more successful in identifying those numbers and isolating those numbers. The more numbers you identify, the more numbers you isolate, you will have a peak probably sooner than later. But then that is a short way of curbing the infection, because you're containing the spreaders, you're containing the carriers. So a higher number doesn't necessarily mean a comparatively high infection rate. It also means that you've been successful in identifying the carriers. I think that is very crucial. And we've told all our officers on ground, be it the medical officers, be it our municipal officers, be it the police officers, and the people, don't fear the number, chase the case. We've adopted the strategy of chase the case, go in there and identify those numbers. That's why we have also probably one of the highest testing rate per million in the country.
You have 15,000, that's what you do.
Per million. Yeah.
Right. So when you speak of hospital beds, we've all seen those scary pictures of KEM hospital with people who had died, their bodies still being left there with patients over there. Can you explain those pictures?
No, I have, in fact, we've said this before, and the municipal corporation has also said that there are a couple of, things that are put into procedure once a person unfortunately dies out of COVID. You have to seal the body. You have to wait for someone to claim it. There are certain medical legal procedures that are put into place. But apart from that, I think there has been a clearance after that. You have a lot more space being created for the mortuary also. I think what is very important is to understand that the amount of pressure that not just government or private, but just an entire medical system is facing around the world, be it the doctors, be it the nurses, be it the hospitals, be it the beds. They're facing unprecedented pressure because the world has never probably seen so many patients at one time in a particular place. And no matter what you do around the world, you will always have a shortage, because you have tons of more people than the hospitals and ICU beds or regular beds available. In that sense, we've actually moved into creating more hospital and medical facilities. Now, in terms of beds for an epidemic where you had isolation wards, we had only 400 as per the requirement in the previous few decades in Mumbai. Within the last 15 days, in hospitals itself, we've increased from 400 to 5,000. The jumbo modular facilities that we're creating, the field hospitals, would have roughly 15,000 beds. Half of them would be oxygenated, half of them non-oxygenated, some of them HDU, some of them ICU, and some of them would also be for dialysis patients for COVID. But this will all be done phase wise, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So phase 1 and 2 is roughly 9,500 beds. Phase 3 would be adding at least 6,000 more beds. So tomorrow we are actually opening up a major facility, which is the Nesco exhibition ground, which has 3,000 lying in beds, with half of them oxygenated. Another facility that's opened up at the BKC, created by MMRD, that has 1,020 beds, 504 oxygen beds. Phase 2 is with 900 isolation beds and 100 ICU beds. We're creating modular ICU beds on wheels. So all of these things are, going into place. These things are happening. But of course, we have to grapple with the gravity of the situation. This is a pandemic. This is global.
Yes. So at the moment, are you saying that there is, so people should just stay with you and be patient, but there is a bit of a shortage?
No, there is, no matter what you do in a country like us with a large population, there will always be a shortage of things. Having said that, we cannot just remain satisfied that there is a shortage. You have to work towards provide maximum to as many people as possible. So obviously, even in terms of ambulances, we have in fact retrofitted our school buses and DST buses to make them into makeshift ambulances. Currently, most of the production of ambulances was shut, so we've got the companies to start off again, get into production, and give us about whatever ambulances are required. So all these things are very important. Even with ambulances, the turnaround time for a typical ambulance with disinfection is more than an hour.
Yes. So, are you concerned? I know that a lot of states are concerned about the increasing number of flights and trains. We've seen 200 new trains starting today, passenger trains. Are you concerned? Is Maharashtra concerned?
We have to choose a particular direction more than concern in terms of how are we going to deal with this opening up or lockdown, or how do we deal with a lesser sense of infection moving from one place to another. The whole purpose of a lockdown was to get into pause mode and to be able to identify the carriers and contain them then and there. One of the fears, of course, is what if the travelers start moving? But I guess there are certain things being put into place by the union and the state government. So I think there is some coordination and cooperation on that.
Okay, that sounds great. Is there anything? I know that there has been some amount of tension between union ministers and the state ministers. We saw a very public kind of a back and forth between Chief Minister Aaditya Thackeray ji and between Piyush Goyal ji. What was, at the end of it is, do you feel that you're getting all the help and the cooperation that you need from the center?
I think we have to put it in this way that, of course, when two different parties and two different coalitions are ruling in two different states or union center, those, different little tussles here and there will always happen. But most importantly, there has been a great cooperation within the parties in the state and with the Prime Minister, with the Home Minister and the Chief Minister. I think these three major entities have been in great cooperation and coordination. And that by far has kept politics aside during the time of pandemic. I think we have to look at the federal cooperative, the federal system that is going on in our country, not just with union and state, but within states also, be it intrastate travel, be it the movement of migrants. So I think it's, at least for me, even though there must have been political, not skirmishes, little rub-offs, I wouldn't think it's the right time for a minister to be speaking on politics. Right now, we're all focused on pandemic, and rather than highlighting any differences, I think we'd like to focus on the unity and serve the people.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you especially mentioned Prime Minister Modi as well as being someone who was, in a positive light in all of this. Well, Aaditya Thackeray, thank you so much.
No, I mean, it's you have to admit that the states and the center and interstates also, there has been a great sense of coordination and support for each other. I think all the chief ministers and, the union government, there has been a good sense of cooperation, and I think we have to keep politics aside and serve the people, and that is what we are elected for.
Thank you so much for speaking to Hindustan Times. Thanks, Aaditya Thackeray.
Thank you.